Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1288B, and today's date is May 24th, 2017, and the title of the episode is, It's All Happening Behind the Scenes, but Will It Work? Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, it looks like the Democrats, the deep state, they are still pushing their agenda to try to find Russian collusion, and they did something very interesting. They wrote a letter to Germany's largest bank, which is Deutsche Bank, to hand over its finding on two politically charged matters. They demand in details whether Trump accounts have Russia ties and if Deutsche Bank loans to Trump were backed by Russia. Now, the lawmakers asked whether the bank's loans to Trump, made years before the New York developer ran for president, were guaranteed by the Russian government, or were in any way connected to Russia. One problem with this is that they don't have the authority to do this. Yeah, they can ask, but Deutsche Bank, they don't have to disclose any of this. They don't have the power to force Deutsche Bank to make any disclosures. And these are private accounts. And there's no crime committed. So what they just did is absolutely ridiculous. But you could see that they're just trying everything. Now, something more important, and this is coming from the Keiser court, and they're stating that there was a violation of the Fourth Amendment. And it looks like Obama violated the Fourth Amendment of the American people. Now, this newly released court order from the Foreign Intelligence Service Surveillance Court found that the National Security Agency under former President Obama routinely violated American privacy protections while scouring through overseas intercepts and failed to disclose the extent of the problems until the final days before Trump was elected president last fall. Now, in describing the violations, the Keiser court said the illegal searches conducted by the NSA under Obama, they were widespread and created a very serious Fourth Amendment issue. These new discoveries come from a recently unsealed Keiser court document dated April 26, 2017, and center around a hearing dated October 26, 2017, just days before the 2016 election, in which the Keiser court apparently learned for the first time of widespread and illegal spying on the American citizens by the NSA under the Obama administration. So the October 26, 2016 notice disclosed that an NSA Inspector General review indicated that with greater frequency than previously disclosed to the court, NSA analysts had used U.S. person identifiers to query the result of Internet upstream collection, even though NSA Section 702 minimization procedures prohibited such queries. This disclosure gave the court substantial concern. And we can see right now the court order goes on to reveal that the NSA analyst had been conducting illegal queries targeting American citizens with much greater frequency than had previously been disclosed to the court, an issue which the court described as a very serious Fourth Amendment issue. The American Civil Liberties Union said the newly disclosed violations are some of the most serious to ever be documented and strongly call into question the U.S. intelligence community ability to police itself and safeguard America's privacy as guaranteed by, yes, the Constitution's Fourth Amendment. And what we're seeing right now is that, yes, from these court documents, Obama was spying on the American people. The intelligence agencies were spying on the American people. And they were using methods to identify certain people. All of this is coming out now. This is not a conspiracy theory. Trump was saying, oh, Obama's spying, and then, of course, the corporate media was saying, oh, he's crazy, that's nuts. Well, actually, he's right. And more information is coming out, which shows that, yeah, he was really doing this. And it wasn't just on Trump. it was on many individuals, because what did they use this for? They used it to blackmail certain individuals. Now think about this for a second. Who is the real threat to national security? I mean, is it President Trump, who shared with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov the intelligence that the Islamic State was developing a laptop bomb to board airliners? Or was it the Washington Post that ferreted out and published this code word intelligence and splashed the details on its front page, alerting the world and the Islamic State to what we knew? Now, the Washington Post and the deep state, and remember, the corporate media is the mouthpiece for the deep state, they weren't really worried about this information getting out there, because in their minds, they fund the Islamic State. They control the Islamic State. Remember, the Islamic State is their paid army. So revealing this information, they don't really care, because the paid army does what they want. They strike terror in different countries. They create false flags. And this is why they're not too worried about that. But what Trump should do when he gets back into the country, he should launch an investigation into this illegal leaking. And I know he asked Comey many times to investigate this, and he did nothing. Because remember, there are secrets and then there are deep state secrets. And as we keep digging, just like the Seth Rich murder, we're going to uncover so many different secrets that it will rip the fabric of America apart. People are not going to believe what our government has been doing. Now, this is a very tricky situation, because if you rip the fabric of America and throw the truth out there, people just don't go, oh, hey, that's the truth. Now I get it. Now I see what's going on. No, they become angry. They don't believe the truth in the beginning. They deny the truth. And it takes a while for them to accept it. And they go through different stages. So it's not as easy coming out going, hey, this is what happened. The deep state's been spying on everyone. They create all these false flags. Think about when you were first learning about all this. How angry were you? How long did it take you to accept this? You went through different stages. And of course, you went through the stage where you try to tell everyone, and everyone thought you were crazy. But think about it right now. And think about what is coming out right now. And this is a very tricky situation. It needs balance. Because if it all comes out at once, it will be a complete disaster. And we can only handle one disaster at a time. We have a collapse coming, and we have a complete collapse of the government coming. And once all this information and the truth comes out, like Bill Holter says, these truth bombs come out, well, we have another problem. And this is a lot for the American people to accept. I know people say, well, just let them accept it. It's their fault for being in the dark, but this will cause riots. Think about if they allow all this to come out and people are angry. What could the deep state do with these individuals? They can make the situation worse. They can make them riot. They can build it up. Look what they've done just when Trump was elected. They had individuals in mass going around breaking windows, setting fires. Look what they did in Baltimore and Ferguson. Think about what would happen if this came out, how angry people would be. So we need to take this in small steps. And I know people just want all the information. I would love all the information to come out, but I could see already, even when I talk to people that I know here that, they're still sleeping, they can't handle it. It's a complete disaster. So I believe that the plan behind the scenes, it's taking small steps. You can't do everything at once. I know everyone wants everything at once. It's going to be very difficult to do it all at once. Now, as we can see, there is more information coming out about Seth Rich, and a lot of this is coming out, and the corporate media, they don't want to have anything to do with this whatsoever. They're not even touching it. Actually, the Washington Post, they're out there saying that this is a conspiracy theory, that this is just ridiculous. Even though Kim.com is coming forward that he would testify, even though WikiLeaks is saying, yes, it was Seth Rich, even though the murder of Seth Rich was not a robbery. And then we have something else that's very odd and strange. Seth Rich's cousin, he deleted a cryptic tweet about Seth Rich's murder. He knew something. Now, on May 15, 2017, Sean Hannity shared a Fox 2 News report titled Family's Private Investigator. There is evidence Seth Rich had contact with the WikiLeaks prior to death, asking thoughts Twitter. Now, Seth Rich's cousin, Jonathan Rich, less than an hour later responded to Hannity stating, "First thing I said when my dad told me was he knew something and he was murdered. The rest of the family thought I was nuts." The next day, user Andy Rich reprimanded Jonathan, saying, "This is not the place and not a topic for you to comment on. I love you, but filter, bro. #family. Now, Jonathan's tweet was deleted shortly after, but the internet, again, nothing ever disappears. And you can retrieve this information. So that information was retrieved, and yes, he did tweet this out. Now, there was another tweet that came out from Jonathan, and this was back in November 2016. He was responding to a tweet linking to a podcast that asked, "Why do people close to Hillary and Bill Clinton tend to end up dead in weird ways?" And he answered it, "Like my cousin." So these are very odd things to be putting out there. It seems like he might have known something or believed something. And we can see that at this point, there's really no investigation into this. And there is a coordinated campaign against anyone that dares question the official narrative. Because if you question it, well, you're conspiracy theorists. Well, why don't we have a real investigation? And why don't we try to uncover what really happened? Well, we know why. Because they're hiding the murder. They're hiding behind all of this. And if there was a true investigation, there'd be so much that would come out from this. It, again, would rip America apart. Now, eventually, this does have to come out. And there should be an investigation. And I'm not saying it's going to rip America apart in a bad way. The truth is going to come out. People won't be able to handle it. But those people who are involved in this, well, this runs really deep. And this is going to lead to many different things. That's what they're really worried about. Because once you start uncovering one thing, it doesn't stop. It continues on and on and on. Now, out in the Philippines, we see that Duterte, he is going after the Islamic State. And he warned that the Philippines could implode if the ongoing Islamist insurgency is not quashed immediately. And he says, "I'm willing to gamble with the martial law. And I'll put a stop to the terrorism." He says, "We will get them just like we got the drug dealers." And remember, Trump congratulated Duterte on going after the drug dealers, the drug movers, which is really the CIA. That's really what he was going after. And that's why the CIA is so angry in the Philippines. This is why the terrorist groups are actually there. Now, Duterte is asking Putin for help and support in the fight against the Islamic State. And he's saying that we need weapons. We don't want the weapons from the U.S. That's too much of a hassle. They have too many requirements on receiving the weapons, because they want to take control of the country. And this, I'm talking about the deep state. He says our country needs modern weapons. We had a certain order in the U.S., but currently the situation is not very smooth. And in order to fight the Islamic State divisions and its individual factions, we need modern weapons. And I've come to gain your support and ask for your help. This is coming from Duterte to Putin. And we see right now that other countries are asking Russia to help come in and fight terrorism because they're actually doing it compared to the deep state, which really supports the terrorist groups. Now, yesterday we reported on an unidentified flying object that flew in the DMZ area between North Korea and South Korea. South Korea open fired, and thank God we didn't get into war. Now, yes, this does happen every so often, and many people thought it was a drone. No one knew really what it was, and then we come to find out that this flying object, it was a balloon. And the South Korean government is saying that, well, we didn't launch the balloon, and these are, little balloons with little leaflets on it. That's what they're trying to convince everyone of, that this is what the North was sending down, and it flew into this area, and they didn't know what it was, so they opened fire. They thought it was a projectile. Most likely a missile. But it was a balloon. And they're saying it wasn't our balloons because that's the wrong shaped balloon. Now, I'm wondering who did this and who actually set the balloons off to try to, rile the situation up, because we know this is how wars get started. Something as ridiculous as this. And of course, the story would change then that a missile was fired into the country, South Korea retaliated, and the war got started. Now, we know that Trump, he's been visiting many different countries right now. He made this arms deal with Saudi Arabia. And again, Saudi Arabia is using these weapons to go into Yemen. Of course, the deep state put a puppet regime in Yemen. The people of Yemen, the Houthis, decided, you know what, we don't want this anymore. They threw him out. And then Saudi Arabia decided to attack, and this was the proxy army for the United States government, central bankers, which is really the deep state at the time. And we see that Trump just sold weapons to Saudi Arabia, and everyone's out there saying, this is horrible. It is a horrible situation. I don't believe we should be selling any weapons to Saudi Arabia at this point. Actually, the war should be stopped in this area. Yemen, the people of Yemen, never attacked Saudi Arabia. This is all coming from the deep state. Now, Rand Paul, he is creating this bill, and he intends to force a vote in the Senate on the record U.S. arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Basically what he wants to do, it's called the Arms Export Control Act. He wants to give senators 10 days to bring up opposition to arms sales. And he's going to have to act pretty darn fast because the Senate is leaving Friday for Memorial Day, and during which they take pretty much the whole week off. So we can see that he's going to have to really move fast on this. And I think actually this most likely is a good thing, because why are we selling arms to this country? What are they doing with them? And why are we in Yemen? And it needs to be talked about, because all these wars that we're seeing all throughout the Middle East, these are illegal wars. They need to come to an end. Our troops need to come home. They need to come home before the collapse. I believe this is what Trump is working on behind the scenes, trying to end the wars, because if you notice, he's going around and he's continually saying peace. We're going to stop the extremists. We want peace. We don't want any of this. And he never talks red lines. He never talks absolutes. And we're going to have to watch him very, very carefully, because on the one hand, if he sends 50,000 troops to Afghanistan and he starts the war up in Libya, and even though he said he's hands off of Libya, let them decide on their own, and he sends troops to Syria, well, we know then that the deep state completely has him. But if he rejects all of that and does the opposite, we do have hope. Now, the Syrian forces, they are pushing their agenda with Russia. They killed 3,000 Islamic State terrorists in Aleppo, and we can see they're clearing out all of these areas. Now, something very interesting. A declassified document obtained under the Freedom of Information Act shows that the U.S. Army failed to keep accurate records of over $1 billion worth of arm transfers in Iraq and Kuwait. Now, this is very interesting because they don't know where these weapons went. How much you want to bet they went to the Islamic State? They went to the deep state's army, the CIA's army, the paid mercenaries. And right now, they can't track where any of these weapons had gone. And they're just missing right now. And this is why Trump has ordered the audit of the Pentagon. We'll have to see how far this goes, but this is what is being done now. Now, we know that in Manchester there was this false flag bombing that occurred. Now, many people are saying that this was a false flag where no one died, even though the corporate media is out there saying that all these individuals have died. And we know that false flags, well, first of all, a false flag can have people die, and a false flag could be a complete hoax. Now again, this bomb went off. There's not much video. We know the UK has CCTVs all over the place, within the Coliseum, on the streets, everywhere. And we know there is security. So the question is, how did these individuals get into this area? Secondly, how do the police and all these investigators know exactly who they are, where they are, and how do they round them up so quickly? It reminds me of like the cyber attacks where they say, oh yes, we know it's North Korea, we know it's Russia, we have proof. Within 2 days we tracked everything down and we know exactly this is what it is, and we know it's all fake. I mean, this happened in the Boston bombing. This happened pretty much everywhere. They knew exactly who everyone was, and always, even in France, the IDs fall out. During 9/11, the passports were on the ground. They weren't even burnt. They knew exactly who they were, but actually some of the passports, some of the people were living in Saudi Arabia still, and that whole story kind of got messed up there. But we can see that, again, something doesn't make sense. They were also having a drill, I think it was a year before, where in this general area where they were doing the same exact thing. Now, those videos are being taken down very, very quickly. And there was a bomber that came in, exploded. People were wearing earmuffs, so, it didn't hurt their ears. They had the fake blood and stuff like that. And it looked pretty much almost exactly what happened during the concert. And, of course, they're saying that this individual, he's a terrorist. But the father came out, and I know the corporate media is reporting this completely different. The father came out saying that his son was not linked to militants. And it didn't make sense because he said that when I spoke to him, he was fine. He sounded normal. And he was ready to go to Saudi Arabia. So something doesn't make sense here. And something is not connecting. Now, what's very interesting about all of this is that, of course, the UK raised the terror level. We know they're going to introduce laws that take away people's rights. This is what they do. We know troops are going to be on the ground, which is already happening. And we see right now that they had this false flag during a concert, or right after the concert, where there were children, teens, and celebrities. And they know celebrities, well, they push the agenda. When they see something like this happen, they're always in the news. Other celebrities come out and they get a lot of traction. And this basically blankets the corporate media. And I find this very, very interesting that this is how they did it. And of course, they use children, teens to really play this up. And we can see right now that all of this, again, is part of a larger agenda. Now remember, the UK is getting ready to leave the EU, and they want them to stay. They already gave them 112 billion euro bill to leave, and that amount might even be going up. So we can see there's a lot of agendas associated with this, and we can see that a lot of things are happening. And again, every time we see something like this, we know there's an underlying agenda, because this just doesn't happen out of the blue. And most of the time, I would say 99.99% of the time, these individuals are patsies. They are promised something. Maybe they're on medication. They're working for the intelligence agencies, and they know exactly who they are. They know exactly where to find them. And we see the same exact MO time and time again.